Ladies and gentlemen, hello to my review of The Rings of Power, the complete series. We're talking about it as a whole, my final thoughts on it. It's only been like 40, 30 minutes since I finished the series, but I really want to talk about it because I do think it's a pretty great series. And there's kind of a lot to talk about. I think I've said this before. Also, if you're new here, I actually reacted to the full series on the channel. You can watch it. I don't know why I'm pointing down below, like click channel name. Find my Rings of Power playlist, and you can watch my full length reactions where you basically sync up the episode yourself to mine, and you can see my commentary going into it. You know, my thoughts of the episode. If you want mini episode reviews of it, it's all down there. And I think going into the Rings of Power, you can. There's like three types of viewers. There's a person who knows nothing about the Rings of Power. There's people who have watched the movies or have like a limited knowledge of it. And then there's what I call the lore masters, people who read the books who have really engrossed themselves in the world. And I think the general consensus, at least in my opinion, is that people who are really into the world of Tolkien's world, you know, Lord of the Rings, find a lot more faults with the show just because they're so knowledgeable about the world, where the other two viewers don't have this knowledge. Like, I'm in the second category. I can't say I haven't read any of the books. I don't know any of the deep lore. I've just seen the movies, and I really enjoyed the movies. I was a big fan as a kid, and still to this day, I think they mainly hold up. Um, so to me, all these faults I see with other people's reviews, I can't relate. Like it does, like lore inaccuracies and stuff, just don't matter to me. It might matter to some people, but who don't know the lore. But to me, if I'm not that engrossed in the world, then if they made some inaccuracies, it really doesn't bother me because I don't know about it. I mean, I guess now I know about it since people talked about it, but to me, it just doesn't matter. And I think this is just a really like and I think the show just hits the mark there. Because obviously, while making it, there's a lot of restrictions regarding the rights Amazon had to the show, so they couldn't mention certain stuff that might have fit better within the show, and you know this age they're covering in 5 seasons, it spawns it spans like thousands of years, I think. So it's hard to fit like a consistent cast into it. So instead of going something like House of the Dragon, which I haven't finished by the way, I'm just saying like I've watched up to episode 6, so this like you can kind of see like the differences. While House of the Dragons do tend to take like bitter time skips, and Lord of the Rings is more condensing it. Now, obviously, I think Lord of the Rings has a bitter time timeline to fill with their scope of the show, but no, I think it's fine if you want to have a human cast that's consistent, so you can connect to the characters more. And again, I do think there's valid points to why people don't like the show, especially for people who really know the lore. But when I hear people say, you know, even if you don't know the lore, it's a mediocre fantasy show, it really bugs me because there's no way it's a mediocre fantasy show. Fantasy shows in general are mediocre, okay? They're infamously mid to bad. That's the consensus I get. I don't really watch them as much, but from everything I've heard, fantasy shows are usually pretty bad. Obviously, Game of Thrones is an exception. It was a phenomenon, and obviously I do think Game of Thrones is better than the show. It's not even a competition in my mind. But to call this a mediocre fantasy show is insane to me. This is definitely on the top of most fantasy shows ever made. Um, Easily. It's not even comparable. I don't know. It's just, there's a lot to appreciate about it too. I think the soundtrack was excellent. I think even people who dislike the show will give the soundtrack a pass just as it was really good. And it was a visual spectacle. Now, I do think their advertisement strategy of, you know, constantly saying, "Oh, this is the most expensive show ever made," really was a bad idea because it rose people's expectations way too high. When in reality, it's beautiful, but people say, "Oh, is it whatever amount of millions beautiful enough to justify the price?" Like it's just like if they didn't say that, I think it would have been fine because it is a visual spectacle. Some of the episodes, some of the scenes were insanely gorgeous, and I think it's definitely one of the most beautiful shows I've seen. Um, so just for the visual spectacle alone, I feel like it's at least a good show. Now I did enjoy the plots, I enjoyed the characters, again, lore and accuracy. For the characters, didn't matter to me because I didn't really know about them. You know, people saying, "Oh, Delagio doesn't act like that. She's more refined, more level-headed in the Lord of the Rings movies." And I'm like, and since I don't know the backstory that they wrote from her, I'm like, okay, but like, you know, this is 5 seasons. Isn't the point of the show going to be her growth into that character we know in Lord of the Rings? Is what I assume. Like, I had a fun time with the characters mainly. I think, you know, obviously some characters were stronger than others. I think my favorite characters were Halbrand, Elendil, or my top two. I think what did I put for third? I think Nori. I actually really enjoyed. You know, I know some people hated the Harfords. I thought they were one of the stronger acted characters. Then you have characters like Arendir and the human girlfriend, which I thought were on the weaker side. Dwarves were pretty good. I know people hated Galatrio. I don't know. To me, she was pretty cool. She's a little cheesy for sure. Little dumb, little narrow-minded, I would say, but it's in the character. It is what it is. I'm sure. Again, I think just because she's such a revenge-focused character, I think she has so much room for growth into a better character. I think the action was pretty fun. I know some of the action scenes seemed a little martial artsy, which was a little weird. I still think it was cool, but it was a little weird. I will agree with that. But it was fun. I'm excited to see some bigger scale battles, because what Lord of the Rings, at least for me in the movies, the bigger scale battles was one of the big appeals to it. It's one of the best, at least in movies, in my opinion, one of the best done bigger battles in cinema with like huge armies facing. Obviously, we didn't get that. Besides, you can argue like first episode, but I don't really think that matters. So I'm excited to see how they can translate that into the series later. Obviously, there's still a lot of setup because, and this they plan for it to be 5 seasons. Lots of just world developing and setup for characters because I assume again we're going to be following a core of these characters throughout the seasons. But yeah. Orcs were cool. I enjoyed the story in general. I thought it was pretty fun. They did the mystery elements fine. I guess everyone kind of guessed who Sauron was. I was hoping that Halbrand was the Witch King, or would later turn into the Witch King, but people were right when they called him Sauron. I still think they did the twist of Sauron good with the last episode, especially still fresh in my mind. I liked how they like did the red herring at the beginning and kind of pitted, okay, is it the stranger or is it Halbrand at the end? And it really got me thinking because I thought they would have been very cheeky if they actually made the stranger Sauron instead. But I'm excited for next season to see Halbrand face off against Adar, orc versus orc army. Now that like again, Sauron doesn't have his orcs, they've all joined Adar, so it could be pretty interesting. I think the dynamic of the two bad guys fighting, for sure, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I will say probably the biggest critique I have of the show, which I know can turn a lot of people off from it, is the pacing. It is quite a slow-paced show. Again, comparing it to House of the Dragon, and it's just natural to compare them because they were being released at the same time, which was very ambitious strategy. Though I guess Rings of the Power released first, so I don't know who like started that decision, but compared to House of the Dragon, which has some really fun pacing, where they still do a great job at setting up characters and stuff, but having a very like active, faster paced show with still maintaining this sense of world and grandeur. This was fairly slow paced. Like I know a person who really struggled getting just through the first episode. To me personally, I don't mind slow pace shows. I actually quite like them. In all genres, like horror, slow paced. If you know me, I'm a horror guy. I think slow pace is fine, but I can see why people wouldn't like it. It definitely felt a little slow. I think the show got better in the second half for me personally, just in general, which was good. But I can see, um, I can see it being slow paced for people, and I think that's a fair criticism for sure. Um, yeah. I don't know. I'm excited. I think it's a good show. Now I haven't finished House of the Dragon. I'm assuming I'm gonna enjoy it a bit more because I think there's just a bit more of my style. But to me, it does feel Lord of the Ringsy, which don't kill me on it. This more happy feel to it. Like Lord of the Rings just has this more adventurous feel to it in general. I feel like it fits it well, and I'm excited because again, they're thinking long con. This was stuff happened in this season. Don't get me wrong, but it's a lot of setup for things to come, drawing the lines, the alliances and stuff. I'm invested. I do think it's a good show. I don't think it's the best show ever made. Again, advertising it as the most expensive show probably backfired, as also it airing at the same time of House of Dragon, which just makes people compare them. When I think a good majority, though maybe I shouldn't say that. Maybe some people like, again, everything is preference, right? I honestly don't think there's something that's objectively bad or objectively better. Just because, if someone likes a movie you don't like a lot, and you can't just say they're wrong for liking it, because if they like it, they like it, right? So maybe people do think this is better, and I think that's fine. I think it's in any ways, I think it's a good show just from the visual spectacle. I think it elevates it to a good show. I don't think this is a decent show. I feel people just overly expect too much, and people forget the literal sea of shit television. I would say the majority of television shows are average to shit. This is definitely one of the better watches of shows. Like if you watch a lot of television, you'll know a lot of shows are shit. A lot of fantasy shows apparently are shit. Like this has to be like one of the better ones, if not the third best one, if you put Game of Thrones and House of Dragons on top of it, which I think is fair. But you're telling me this is worse than like some Netflix fantasy shows? There's no way. This is like, in my opinion, unless you just hate slow paced shows, this is like one of the better shows. In the fantasy genre, I should say. It's not my favorite show of all time. I'm not hard simping for it. I just think it gets a little too much hate from some valid for sure, because again, it's all personal opinion. But I think some of it's just a little unwarranted, in my opinion. A little fandom attacking, and it happens with any like big beloved fandom getting a movie adaptation. There's always people who might not like it, considering some of the directions they take with it. Obviously, it was a bit bitter for this one, since it's such a beloved fandom. But I truly think, if you're not super into the Rings like me, who just have movie knowledge or just going into it blind, I do think it's a pretty great series. And I'm excited to watch season 2, which is predicted for 2024. But yeah, that's just my opinion. If you have any other thoughts, let me know. Or you want me to talk about some other aspect of the show, just comment it down below or respond to my comments. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. Again, you can find my full-length reaction to the whole series on the show. Next, we're going to be focusing on finishing House of the Dragon. We have I think we stopped at episode 6, so we have 4 episodes left plus the review. Then I have no idea what we're doing. We're probably just going to go back to anime. I don't know if we'll go back to more live action shows unless people want it. They've been doing better view-wise, the reactions, than some of my anime reactions, but that's because I reacted to many hipster shit animes, so. But yeah, anyways, thanks for watching. Hopefully I see you again in the future. And yeah, don't forget to hit the sub button if you like the content. I have a lot of reviews on the channel for various things, etc., etc. Yeah, hopefully I'll see you again in the future. Peace.